Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Joy. Hi, Christian.
It's great to see everybody. We're all up, ready to do it. Nothing like the excitement of doing something live versus being recorded. And when the guest shows up at the minute, just looking off to the side at your camera there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's been a little difficult these days.
Yeah. But they
I can move.
ready, showing up. Let me do the kind of intro. We'll get into the chatter here. I know it's hard doing a monthly show versus the weekly podcast and other things that we have going on. But welcome everyone to Guardians of M365 Governance, episode 14. This series is a monthly webcast focused on the rapidly evolving and expanding Microsoft 365 governance story. And I think today's a great example of, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of looking at all of the announcements through the lens of a governance perspective. Our goal, of course, is share insights, best practices, and the latest information about the new governance features and capabilities within M365. And we're dedicated to everything governance within the ecosystem. So if you have questions or comments throughout on what we should cover or guests we should have on the show, please comment. And so anyway, just very quickly before we introduce our guests here, how's everybody else doing? What else is going on in the governance ecosystem out there?
Conferences. So I will travel again after a little bit of winter break. There will be a collab days in Bremen, northern Germany, where I will talk about Copilot adoption best practices together with Viva and employee experience. And the week later, so this is next Saturday, then the week later, also on a Saturday, there will be a global AI summit in Hamburg. Also, again, same topic. But then I will talk about how to move from SharePoint agents, low level, no code, to Azure AI, hardcore coded.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah.
And did you guys see? So there was it was the Fabian Williams did something for the folks that don't know Fabian. He's now at Microsoft. He was at MVP. He's doing a lot of stuff. He does, like, he's an advocate for the engineering community, the developer community, and he does a lot of Copilot extensibility, M365 extensibility stuff. And the stuff he was doing is relevant to all of us, especially for anybody that's an evangelist or product marketer or anything. He's been building out and automating tools around Copilot to generate other content, create blog posts and abstracts and descriptions and social media posts and all this automatically on the back end using Copilot. And again, on the back end, other models, other LLMs and other models.
Yeah.
That was very exciting. I've seen his blog post when he was playing with DeepSeek, running locally, and inspired by his LinkedIn post, I also wrote something which I'm sharing now in the thread. Maybe you can share it also later, Christian. I wrote a blog post where we can download DeepSeek in a very new Visual Studio Code extension called AI Toolkit. So you use the Studio, you enable the new AI extension, which is currently in preview and released, let's say, 4 days ago. And then you would download your large language model of your choice, which can be Llama, which can be DeepSeek. So in case you would like to develop something and don't trust the DeepSeek cloud, then you can just run it inside a Visual Studio Code, play around, use the playground.
Wise.
In my case, I had an HP laptop, which has a special NPU. So it was really using the neural processing unit. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that DeepSeek is currently, no, it's getting very nerdy. Sorry. DeepSeek is the only large language model from Hugging Face, which supports the new NPU in this Azure toolkit running on Visual Studio Code.
Way down in the weeds. But no, I think that, again, all these experiments, this again, and I was just having this conversation last night with a partner, talking about how this is great evidence why you need to have within your organization a governance group that is then looking at these experiments that we're doing, what would be the impact? You're going through the questions, you're understanding, if we were to go live with this, what data are we talking about? What third-party systems, what external libraries are we accessing here? What's the risk footprint for all of that? So it's a security discussion, it's a governance discussion.
Exactly.
Everything old is it's new again. And I know Stacy's going to have some amazing opinions on this too. But we used to joke about the governance committee was the committee that always said no. But that was of no benefit to the organization. Same with having AI governance communities or committees in our organization. They have to be open to evaluating and testing so we can see what's going to work for our organization instead of just saying no and locking it down.
Yeah, 100%. I'm so with you. So that was actually a joy, the key topic of it, because I don't like this black and white conversation that, okay, everything which is new, it should be always allowed, or everything which is new, especially when it's coming from China, should be always locked down. No, we need to find gray zones. And that's the reason why governance is so crazy important. Because here I was showing, listen, you can run it on your own laptop. You can go offline. You don't need any cloud or internet. You can just use it offline. When you are convinced, then use DeepSeek running on Azure. That's always an option in the Azure Foundry. So there are many options, and you don't need to say no to a Chinese LLM because it is too exciting to say no.
But again, you need to do things in having the constraints in place where people are aware, you're aware of what people are doing, the technology they're playing with, they're not using in their work laptop and a work system, downloading things onto your local environment versus, firewalled off into this environment, all those things, that should be part of the discussion. That's my point. I think that's the key. If you're having those discussions, you're not going to automatically say no and just lock things down because that's not the answer. That's when you have shadow IT. That's when people say, look, I'm going to go experiment because this could add value. I'm going to go do this regardless of what you say, but it might just not be in a safe way.
And 2025 is going to be the year of, I'm just inventing it, sorry, shadow agents, shadow LLMs, shadow AI.
Already is.
I see Ragnar's already working on his abstracts for late summer, early fall sessions around that.
There's no.
Let's jump into this. So for this 14th episode, we welcome Stacy Deere, who's a fellow M365 MVP and CEO of Focal Point Solutions, and somebody who is also, if you step back, you look at the people that have been talking about governance for a long time, Stacy's one of those people as well. In fact, I think Stacy, when I met you and you were doing some stuff, I think it was back in the era you were doing that show with Stephanie, like the SharePoint TV related stuff. Again, it was heavily governance focused with a lot of that as well.
Yeah, I actually got into this because I was telling every people, hey, no, let's figure it out first before we go do this. Because I was that person like, hey, can we have some gates here? And I was just sitting here listening to you guys talk. I was like, we should have a discussion one day about the evolution of governance through our years. Because boy, has it drastically changed from way back then till it is now. Because I remember the days where you're like, hey, let's put a governance team together, put them in a room, and you got to review this doc and this doc. I'm like, no, we're not reviewing docs anymore. We're actually out there testing, like you said, testing what works, what doesn't work. So it's changed so much through the years. But yeah, that's how I got started in all this. So
wonderful.
Well, I know we talked about wanting to spend about 30 minutes. I mean, the goal is always with the show to be like 30 minutes, a little bit longer. There's a lot to go through. But what specifically you had with Ignite last fall, you had that special SharePoint event that happened here earlier this, I don't even time now. I can't remember. We're only in February. Doesn't it feel we're like in Q2 already?
Well, yeah, January was 6 months long.
Right.
yeah, yes.
So last month, all the way last month when that happened, or was it this month? Was it February? I don't even remember.
I don't
It
know.
was ages ago. We've all aged so much. I've gone great in this 6-month January.
Moments.
But lots of announcements that came out of that. And anything that just jumped out, let's just talk about that. Anything from a governance lens, anything that has just stood out from the Ignite announcements. I know Ragnar, like you kicked things off in this discussion that we had offline with 3 bullets. So I could seed it. So you have to start off the top, like the built-in content governance controls. That's something that in the evolution of Microsoft 365 that we're seeing more and more governance being built into the product versus having to go and figure out what to configure out of the box, or I have to go buy all these third-party tools. There's so much more that you can do with out of the box with purview, but even more concentrated capabilities being built directly into the admin center.
I think my biggest thing for all of it, because I've been in the AI since it started, is just the restricting of the content that you can discover through everything. And one of the things that I found, like with all of the things that came out, is it's great to finally see that I felt like governance was in the forefront for all the updates that came out.
Yes.
Because it was more focused on how can we make governance better, easier, automated, and all these things were pieces and parts of that when AI first came out. If you wanted to restrict certain types of data from not being in it, like if you didn't want OneNote content in there, you had to go disable the add-in, right? And now you have all these additional tools that they're finally giving you and allowing you to automate it, and restricting the content that you can get to, I think has been great with the new policies, the sensitivity, retention things, all those types of things they've just gotten so big very quickly. When I saw it, I was like, okay, so when can I play? Right. So I was probably one of the first people in there because that's just something that we should have had, in my opinion, from the beginning.
Yeah. I think Microsoft recognizes organizations need help, and it can't be necessarily a pay-for-play help. It's legitimate if this tool is going to be adopted, if the concept of AI inside of Microsoft 365 is going to be adopted, organizations need help. Some of these things that are inside of the SharePoint Advanced Management feature suite, they're shades of governance and assistance that we've needed since SharePoint rolled out.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's here. Now it's more widely available.
I love the fact we didn't have to buy an additional license. If you already had AI, Copilot, then you got it. That was nice to see. That was great.
There's been a few licensing surprises and things that we're not going to go through. We're not going to go through any level of licensing discussion here, but I think that is, again, you have to have a PhD to understand the Microsoft licensing. But yeah, I think the number one concern when we're talking about Copilot was around the risks of oversharing. And so going in and looking at and understand how are people using to be able to go in and to define it. This is something when Copilot rolled out, Ragnar and I were working together. Like Ragnar, you went out and we were working with Rencore and looking at experimenting and be able to define oversharing. Like there wasn't clear cut. We had to go in and do a few things and build some policies to look at it to give us the data. Is this truly showing us all of the oversharing?
Reverse engineering was our job, actually.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, but that was one of those things. I think, again, Microsoft even wasn't thinking yet about it. It was, they were out in front innovating, hey, you can do this thing. And then it was immediately, we were looking at it and saying, wait a second, you're going to break. Here's how using Copilot, if you turn everything on, breaks all of the policies, all of the rules. Loop, same thing. It was, you go out, you share something, as soon as anybody can invite somebody else externally into it, or not externally, but outside of that group inside the company, and it will break any policies, any of the controls that you had around that very secure documentation. It doesn't have the ability to inherit the labels and all the other things that you're doing. This is a problem. So we have to be aware. How are people actually using this? What can we do?
And that's what I'm seeing currently as one of the most important things, that we need more advanced tools who give preactively recommendations about Copilot conflicts, oversharing, because there's no time to check everything. We need tools to say, listen, you're doing something wrong. Looking now also into Joy's direction, you're doing a wonderful job here in having your own dashboards around recommendation, health checks. So I think that's what customers want, saving times, because you get immediately a response, a feedback when something is configured wrong.
Right. And I was going to say, honestly, so much of governance is reverse engineering, isn't it?
Yeah.
We see there's a problem. Okay, how did we get there? What can we do to keep us happening again? And oversharing is definitely one of those where, do you remember, was it 2010 when Microsoft first put the share button into SharePoint? And all of us kind of admin-y people were like,
Was it that old?
I think so.
I thought that was newer.
Well, it proliferated more and more, but I don't know that I want it to be that easy to share And here we are talking about oversharing, even in the context of the organization. When I take this file that's in my team, which is in my SharePoint site for this audience, and I now go share it org wide.
Yeah. But also the bigger question is, what does it mean that I'm sharing it? Because a lot of people, a lot of users think that sharing is, oh, this is my teammate. We're in the same site. I'm going to share this document with them. That's not what that means, right? It breaks the permission. You're doing all these things. And so I feel like there's always a lot of misconstrued information being given. And we all saw Copilot come out and everybody purchased it, turned it on, and they were like, oh crap. And they turned it off. So now people are like, prove it to me. I think finally these announcements and stuff that we're getting are ways that we can prove that. But it's going to take a little bit because there was some information that got exposed that really should have never gotten there. And there's not all people at all these companies like us to say, no, don't do it.
Well, that's another reason why. And so another one of the Ignite announcements was around the restricted content discovery. So being able to go in there and before all that happens, setting up specific policies that prevent specific areas in your environment, specific data sites from being accessed by Copilot or that org-wide search, kind of all those things. Again, if you were very search-centric, you were probably already locking that down. You're going through that activity. But most organizations did more of this model where new features, cool, let's turn it on, let's see what happens. Oh, crap. We're seeing spreadsheets with financial information. Again, it's that delve experience all over again. Turn it back off.
Stacy, do you see an acceptance for your customers with this restricted search? Or do they say, listen, there are too many downsides because then we cannot find it anymore in the enterprise search, M365 search?
Yeah, there's a mix of it. And it's sometimes very hard because some organizations are like the enterprise search. I want to go out there, I want to find all my stuff. And you're like, that's great. And I want to be able to give you all your content. But if you also want to use this functionality, let's put all these things like pros and cons. And so when I explain it to them in that way about what it does, one versus the other, they're like, okay, you win. Let's try it that way. But just trying to say, no, don't do it, this, that. So it's been a struggle for some because some people are like, I don't like to go find anything. I just search. I use enterprise search all the time. And I have some clients that we've done manage metadata and content types so well and everything like that. They never search. So it's very different.
Just one small fun fact. I came to Microsoft by the fast search acquisition, so my heart was beating and still beating for enterprise search. But since I'm using Copilot, I never did some kind of searches. So I'm not searching anymore in the search bar because I'm so addicted now to Copilot.
That's a big
What
question.
you're searching for.
But I'm still using Outlook search.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother discussion. That's why I think that I was about to say that how the externally, like the going through to Google search, Bing search, whatever, my Alta Vista page, my home page is still there. But anyway, that world is changing rapidly, right? Already AI is integrated into the search results of most of the search sites. But are people even going to those pages? And I see comments from people that are using ChatGPT or Copilot, the public version, the free version of that, in that same way. Technically, it's ChatGPT is integrated into the Bing search and is part of that, but it's just changing the way that looks. Internally, again, there are Copilot commands that I go in and leverage that I used to go spend time searching through Outlook to try and find those things where I can now go to Copilot and look across, because the biggest pain that I have is, where was I having that conversation? Was it in a chat in a team? Was it in an email? Like where
I
was
always use Copilot to find it.
Always.
Yeah, always.
And I think that needs to somehow just be better integrated into the default experience to find that.
I gave it up. It was my vision for so many years to have this MC5 search for exactly this use case, for this question, but I completely gave up. And now Copilot is doing an extremely awesome job to find it. So I'm using this prompt a few times a week.
Yeah, I used to use Delve I was so sad when they retired it, and I get it that it was absorbed and all that with other apps, Copilot, but I use Dell quite a bit. That was my favorite app on a Monday morning to sit
Mm.
down and go see, okay, where did I leave off on Friday? Who's doing what that I could help with, contribute with? But of course, you have the power of knowledge of knowing it's only showing me things I already have permission to. So there's no breaches. I'm not sneaking in or spying on anybody, which is the same conversation we have to have now for Copilot. It's not breaking permissions. It's not sneaking things to you.
Yeah.
Permissions are
Oh.
correct.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean
That's
permissions are correct. It means you've got it because
Give me permission.
it's not security through obscurity. It's not. That's where the conversation, and we've talked about it in this series, is that when Dell was turned on, and even beginning with Copilot, that people would, in fact, I got in an argument through one of our AMAs. So I can't remember if maybe one or more of you were part of this conversation, but somebody was arguing like, no, I'm seeing like something's broken. I was like, I'm telling you, no, what's broken is that you have maybe dual policies and they're conflicting. And so someone is seeing the results that
Yeah.
they shouldn't see. It's not because Delve, or in this case, Copilot, are broken. It's
Yep.
because your policies are conflicting. They're getting that content in a way that you are not expecting. You need to go look at that.
Joy, can I just dig a little bit deeper into your use case? Are you using a special prompt which says, okay, please tell me in Copilot all the news about my team or about my company members? Is there a prompt, or do you just say, okay, please tell me the latest updates? Where is currently Michael, you are, and so on, working on? So are you using like name, comma, name, comma, name? Or do you use a security group, an M365 group, to gather these informations to find more about what's everybody doing?
So onboarding a new head of success for Orchestry. So a lot of what I've been doing is, hey, go through the last 6 months. We don't email each other eternally, so that's a little bit easier. But like channel chats and internal chats that have to do with, and I'll give it topics. So I'll say with the success team, and I'll mention the group. Sometimes it's the individuals, because that'll give different results. If I mention like anywhere where this security group is being used, I'm going to get different results than if I put individuals in there. Go at it a couple of different ways, compare, contrast the data. Actually, I have it compare and contrast the different results that I get back, and have it put it into a beautifully organized chronological list. I can even have it like help me prioritize these. So this new head of success that comes in doesn't have to guess. And of course, I have the final say on what truly is the priority, but at least it gets it closer for me.
Mhm.
Time.
You know what I love? I'm sure you've all, because we all know him, but Michael Gennady, who's with Microsoft. He's been tweeting about sharing out through social some of his prompts and things out there where it's things I didn't even think about. Where we're asking for data, whatever it is, to pull it back from these multiple locations, all the things, focusing on then the output, the format of the output, and being much more particular about specifying the format and this structure and doing these things. So it's bringing back tables or graphics or what those things as part of that result. And I think sometimes I just forget about that. It's more of a, here's what I'm looking for, and then what am I going to get?
Yeah, because if you ask for it in the right format, then if you can copy and paste it and it looks beautiful in other ways, then you copy it, but it does not look so beautiful when you paste it. So it's all the way you ask for the data. He's got some really, I've used a few of them.
Hey, Stacy, one of the other big announcements is around DLP, so data loss prevention within Copilot. And so that is something specifically making sure that responses that are generated by Copilot are not using sensitive topics, content.
The special labels for
Yeah.
Copilot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How is that being used? Are you like customers very like on top of that?
Yeah, so I have a client that the piece around where it starts to prevent AI from referencing that type of data, the confidential data. And that was an issue for one of my clients. And so we right now are starting to dig into that for them. And so we're starting to essentially work on some different policies and stuff like that. But what's also nice is the fact that it comes back and it's telling you, okay, it's showing you the references so that you know what you need to go back and tweak. So that's just cool because it allows you to work with it, which is my whole thing about AI and Copilot is it's a collaborative tool. Yeah, I just don't ask it one question. It tells me the answer. I collaborate with it to get the full answer that I need. And I'm finding when I'm working in those, it's the same way. So you're not ever going to get it the first time, but the more you work with it and the more you're collaborating with it, you're getting better results for it. But I have some that are doing that. Some of the things to reduce GDPR and high risk, high trust and stuff like that. So I've got some clients that are focused on that right now. So they're literally are moving towards this model just because of that. So the increase in that. So they're not going live essentially with it until all those types of things are done because they're very high trust and all that kind of stuff. You name it, they have it in compliance. And I appreciated them, the fact that if I pushed back, they said, you just tell us how far we need to step back. And so that was nice to hear where a lot of times we get pushed to go faster than we want to. But when you're talking about that kind of data, it's nice to be able to push back and then listen. I've got one major client focusing strictly on that kind of stuff right now.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Is there what conversations are happening, if any, around governance and agents?
It depends on who you talk to. I have some say not quite ready for that. And I'm like, so I think there were just, the reason why I think, and this is my opinion, is just there was so much that has come out recently that agents isn't at the top of that list at this point. I feel like it will come, but just everybody's diving into some of that other stuff because they're like headliners, right? They're headlining things that people want right now. And I think they'll get to the agents, but right now the focus for, especially on my stuff, hasn't been there yet.
Feel that for governance and agents, and this is where my mind goes, because I'm not in the trenches like you are anymore, is that it's going to be a similar conversation that we had for governance in the Power Platform.
Yes.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Joy.
Very
That's exactly my comment.
Yeah, very much. It's exactly the types of conversation that you feel like you're having again, all over again, just different technology at this point, right?
Buzzwords.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I look at it like you can't bake a cake without breaking some eggs. I know some people don't like that. They want to have
Harsh,
everything
yeah.
locked down completely, but then you're going to limit innovation. You're not going to find out what are the extents of what can we go and do. And that's one reason. I know this is a broader conversation around the culture of an organization, but you have to allow people to experiment. There has to be some degree of R&D to play with, and mistakes will be made.
Yeah.
But
I think, Christian, here we are in a different situation because everybody can get this Copilot Studio license for free and then play around in this playground. It's only going to be available for the whole organization when the Copilot Studio license owner, so the real license who costs money, if he or she is going to deploy it to the organization. But everybody can start building these agents. So that's benefit here. So it's not about locking things down. Everybody can play and build the agents, but the deployment is in the hand of the admin who has the real paid license. And then what I'm hearing from my customers that I'm now back in consulting, so I'm also running these workshops, is that they say, listen, Ragnar, I understand the value of Copilot agents. I fully understand the story, but I'm clearly missing the guardrails here. We need more governance because this agent is created for a special use case, and I don't want to roll it out to thousands of people because it's maybe only relevant for, I don't know, maybe 20 people. So simple things like a permission or a role concept is currently missing, and they don't want to roll out too many agents to too many people, which are confusing, but they need trainings, IT support, and so on. So they need more simple things, which we know since 20 years. This agent for this group, for this.
But that makes my point, Ragnar, is that if you have to have conversations around this, you're not going to know all the answers and what we need to be locking down, what we need to be doing. If people can't even come and say, hey, look, I'm doing this, I'm experimenting. It's great that with the free licenses, you can go, it's basically Microsoft was smart to lead with this kind of freemium model. I guess they
Yeah.
didn't lead with
Yeah.
it. This is
Very,
like
very smart.
phase 2 of this. But to do that, to hook everybody on their drug, and then, but to do something to scale it, yes, you have to have the proper licenses for that. But you should be having then the conversations like, what would be the impacts of this? How do we then test this out? What do we need to do to make sure that this, when we roll it out, it's done the right way?
Yeah.
And I
And
would like
Christian,
to
sorry, Christian, you just mentioned a freemium, and you didn't say free. So you're saying freemium, which means that there is no a new pay-as-you-go model. And I
Right.
promise you not to go too deep into the licensing topic. But it's not only that they have a license of $240 per month for the Copilot Studio, there is also a pay-as-you-go. And this very unclear pay-as-you-go license model where you need a PhD, as you mentioned. That's something what customers prevent to roll out because it's so unclear how many costs will be at the end of the month.
Yeah, that's why you have to pilot it, roll it out slowly, look at those initial costs that people are actually then
Yeah.
using this, if
Yeah.
it's the pay as you go. Yeah, the
Exactly.
consumption model is really popular with the software companies, which it sounds great. Like we're only paying for it as we use it. But then you have to look at what are the transactions that it's billing me on? If I roll this out and make it available, is everybody then going to go in and use this thing? And suddenly I find these enormous bills because
Mhm.
people are using this thing. So you've got to look at
Yeah.
that. I know we had a question that came in too, or I'll share it up on screen here. But Mahaman says, how do SPFX customizations contribute to enhancing governance and security in SharePoint?
Love this question.
if you're using the SharePoint framework, you know you're doing it the right way because it's the supported model. Thoughts, Ragnar? You said you love the question. What do you love? What do you love about the SPFX customizations?
Because on the one hand, again, they can visualize and show and display the permissions. So the biggest value what I'm currently seeing is that they add more transparency. Who has access to which kind of workspace, which kind of vision level. So that's something what the SPFX can do. Cost-saving topics. Maybe there's also a chance to develop SPFX frameworks to visualize costs or costs where costs are violated, whatever. But I see both. So
Yeah.
and
Well, it forces people to go through the process there. So if you go through this, accepted this model, I think this is what you're saying, Joy, is then it's following certain standards. It's not just somebody went on their desktop, created something, hey, look at my solution, push it out there, and it just causes all these problems. That it will work within the environment because it meets those standards. That helps. That's part of the discussion that has to happen around governance. It's not just, hey, here's what we're trying to achieve as a business. It's here's architecturally how we've built it. This is what we're trying to do. Having some degree of oversight of these solutions, because somebody may go in and say, this is why what you built for yourself won't work with the team, certainly not for the enterprise. And for this to scale, for us to roll it out, we need to architect it in a way that it'll be scalable, supportable, kind of all those things.
Right.
Yeah. The only issue what I'm currently seeing with SPFX is here that I don't see a lot of opportunities to visualize when something in SharePoint, for example, was configured wrong. So there are less visualization. Listen, you did something wrong, and there's also very few ways only to hardening things. So when permissions which were inherited were broken, SPFX tools cannot really harm things, or so it's more about it's built to build things for developing things, but not too much for governance purposes where you show misconfigurations or violations.
I know some of the other discussion around the SharePoint event, maybe we move forward like out of the Ignite world, like that last fall stuff, that's so far back. If January was 6 months, how many years ago was Ignite last
A
fall?
lifetime.
Right. It changes. Wait, so you had this special SharePoint event talking about it. It was very much on like the designer. It was more of the where years ago it was what was it 2016 the SharePoint event that took place in San Francisco where they brought back Teeper was back in that role and the charge, and it was all about making SharePoint even more beautiful. And now I refer to it, I'm sure this will make some Microsoft people cringe, but I call it the Wixification of the SharePoint workplace. but it's like that WordPress Wix experience where I can design and move everything. So much control over. I love that about SharePoint. That about a lot of the announcements that were out there.
Yeah.
And there's like almost every day, every week, certainly there's announcements of new different components for your intranet, for your sites out there. But the big things around governance were around the content classification and automated metadata management. And also, again, about oversharing, dealing with those, both of those things inside SharePoint itself. So things like autofill for your metadata.
I'm pretty excited about that one because I may have a fully funded prototype working with a law firm. All of that's in the works right now. I'm pretty excited about it because one, their biggest thing is everybody in their organization can have access to all the documents. So they don't really need permissions to keep things away. But more theirs is with the autofill based off the department and whatnot is whatever area you're in using the content that is relevant to you versus someone else. And so I'm pretty excited about that one because we're going to be using some of the OCR functionality and all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty excited with all the stuff we got planned for that one. I'll have to come back and tell you guys about it, but I'm pretty excited about using all that new technology with that law firm.
Wonderful. So if you want to give feedback then later to the engineering team, my former Yammer customer success, my former Yammer customer success manager colleague is now the program manager for this feature.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm happy to connect you when you want to share feedback.
Yeah,
You need-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I just see just tons of people want to use metadata, but sometimes if they have to do a lot of tagging themselves, then they just don't want to do it or they choose not to do it and people get frustrated. And so I think the more that we make that available, price worthy as well, I think more people will use it. It'll be better for everybody.
I know some of the other, and I know we're just about out of time here. The one last thing that was really important from a governance standpoint is the auditability and reporting on what's happening with the use of, especially the use around Copilot. So there's new reporting features for agent and content usage to ensure that your team, that your admins can better monitor AI interactions and access the logs and get to that data and then customize what you need, what information you need about how people are working. So to be able to do that, pattern detection to understand that, hey, usage, this looks abnormal, this area, are we starting to see something where the behaviors, it just heavy usage by a very excited group of users over here, or is there something that's happening so you can just have tighter control over your content?
Yeah, well, constantly learning too, right? Through those data-driven insights that it's using. So it's learning just from the entire time how your business works, the types of things that you get in. I think that's great that it's always evolving.
Especially with the deployment of agents,
Yeah.
tracking their usage, knowing like what is being used and, hey, is this something we're seeing this agent take off? Can it be more broadly used elsewhere? Or
Yeah.
if we have two that are similar, is there one that's winning out and why?
And we've just started because now we're getting the memory functions where we can share the knowledge between different Copilots. So Copilot for PowerPoint can learn from Copilot for Loop or from Word. So that's another thing. And then also I'm really looking forward to see the reasoning models rolling out to Copilot where I can watch Copilot thinking.
I feel like it too, we go back to that Power Automate conversation. Will we get to the point where like, okay, we see that this group, this cohort of employees is using this agent to do this thing. Holy moly, that would be a game changer org wide, right? Take those small use cases, grow it up, scale it, really increase that return on investment.
And then also the whole conversation around orchestration, where we finally are building these agents based on multiple layers, where they say, listen, this is a support agent, and in the first support layer, it's going to use this kind of large language model, and the second one, it's going to use a small language model, and then the third is going to be a deep thinking model, and then creating governance around these three tiers and support tiers levels. So it's a universe which just opened in front of our eyes.
To wrap things up, one, always thank you to the entire panel. Stacy, thanks for being our guest today. Maybe do as a guest, and this is something kind of new. We're talking about for future shows. We're talking about like folks that we could bring in, topics that we want to cover around this. Obviously, anybody watching, if there's a topic you'd like to cover around governance, do a deep dive into. If there's an individual or yourself you'd like to be part of the show, get involved besides commenting off the side. Thanks to the couple folks that commented live on screen. Please just drop us a line. Let us know. We've got the hashtag, of course. I guess I could pull up the banners here. Anything that you share your feedback out in various socials. We're across all of them. So I know X, Blue Sky. I'm still monitoring Mastodon and Threads as well. So I think Ragnar, you're everywhere as well. I see
Everything except Tinder.
it's great. All those things, everything, please reach out to us. Of course, you can connect with us through our socials there. But Stacy, I know that real quick about with what you do, just give us like the 20-second of how you work with clients as well. So I want to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, like we do everything in the Microsoft stack. We do a lot of probably deeper dive into governance and security than a lot of other companies do, just because it's a passion of mine and stuff like that. So it's user adoption, etc. But when it comes to migrating, organizing your data, all that kind of stuff, we're here for you. And also, we work with this great third-party company that just helps do great provisioning things. And
That companies.
yeah,
Sounds fantastic.
Or orchestrate things.
well, yeah, yes, they help orchestrate lots. We love working with them. We make a great team.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Wonderful.
And hey, we will be back. So we are doing these shows on the third Wednesday of every month, but we'll have news coming soon of our next guest. And so be watching for that. And again, go out and follow. You can find the past recordings. Ragnar has them on his YouTube page. I have them on my YouTube page.
And on our podcast. So in case you would like to listen to us, just grab your favorite podcast player, Spotify,
Yep.
whatever. Is
We're
Apple
all
Music.
over the place. And Joy, are you creating? Do you have a playlist of all these on your page as well out there?
Adding it to my to-do list.
Oh yeah. Okay. There you go.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks so much everybody for watching. Thanks so much for the rest of my panelists, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Stacy.
Thanks.